You know what Gen Z is? I just looked it up to make sure I knew. Generation Z, members of the generation of people born between mid-1990s and the mid-2010s. So, 95 to 2015, roughly. Roughly. And that would include Isaac Willour, who joins us right now. He is a young person, and that gives him special status around here. He's a member of Generation Z and also a member of Young Voices. Isaac, welcome back.
Hey, Todd. It's great to be back.
You're a lot older than the last time we talked. Because that was several days ago.
Man. But it's good. It's good to be here, man.
So Gen Z, for older folks like us, we don't really know what Gen Z is. I mean, we can hear that it's people in their 20s and younger, but I don't know that we're good at defining what that is in terms of beliefs and cultural differences. We make a lot of assumptions. How would you say that you guys are different from the rest of us?
Yeah, I mean, Gen Z is like any younger generation. It tends to be more politically liberal, this kind of thing. But also, I mean, the way I view Gen Z is as the product of a lot of very rapid and expansive cultural change. So you think about the 2008 recession, a lot of us lived through that. Some of our formative years occurred while that was going down. And then more recently, COVID especially. So basically, what my general experience of being Gen Z, interacting with people, is we're fairly opinionated on matters that pertain to what we can be told is social justice. Now, the problem is, we'll get into talking about some of the issues today, that sometimes that focus is wrong. But we're very concerned about issues of social justice. We're very concerned about issues that we perceive as affecting common humanity, but also a lot of us don't really have the lived experience to distill those correctly, and we can tend to shoot from the hip on that a lot, which is why a lot of people my age have such radical views on certain social issues.
But where did that come from? How did you guys get radicalized, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak to why everyone got radicalized. I mean, a lot of people get radicalized from all kinds of places. So many people are just radical people to begin with. And again, I think a lot of people, a refrain that I hear a lot is that people, especially people on the left, people are progressive because, especially young people who are progressive, they're progressive because they don't care about such and such people and this kind of thing. I find that assumption to be completely, exactly the opposite.
Wait, what would that assumption be? Because they don't care about what kind of people?
Because they don't care about certain classes of people. I think a lot of people my age who are progressive because, or not because they don't care, but because they do care, but their care is completely misdirected and misinformed on a lot of issues.
But I don't get what the wrong assumption is. Why would we assume that Gen Z people don't care about certain groups of people, and what would those groups be?
Yeah, well, I mean, our generation's overwhelmingly liberal. It's very easy to assume that we just don't care about people who maybe are more conservative, or especially with issues like cancel culture, we don't care about actual due process, this kind of thing. It betrays a flippant, callous attitude. But I think it's deeper than that, though, because a lot of Gen Z people who are progressive believe that the most effective way to care is by offering up state-based, government-based solutions, collectively based solutions, and they believe that that's care, and it's our job to show them that it's not and to explain why it's not, and that's why we do things like this.
But do you have a sense of why this occurred with that generation? I would assume it happened because the schools got radicalized, and their parents are probably more educated, so they went through college, perhaps, and that those two influences have been largely taken over by the left, and there's been indoctrination going on. And is that fair, would you say, or what are your thoughts on that?
I'd say so, approximately. I mean, also, you have to remember, a lot of the things that we lived through, we just talked about the recession, talked about COVID, these were large-scale social disruptions. And I think a lot of us can fall into the trap of assuming that large-scale social restructuring is what's needed to fix those kinds of things. Because when they happen in our formative years, they've come across as very almost world-ending, and there's a great sense of maybe we could call it learned helplessness. And I think that manifests itself in our politics too. So I think it could definitely come from schools. It definitely came from schools for some people. But the radicalism, it comes from a lot of places, and sometimes it comes from the belief that, and this belief is not limited to Gen Z people, that, well, everything's going to hell in a handbasket. We might as well just say what's on our mind. We might as well just take the gloves off.
Yeah, but
we see that temperament all the time.
I was a young boomer when the Vietnam War was going on, and that radicalization was wanting to declare war on the government and fighting the power structure and rebellion. And this is the opposite. This is rebelling against the great liberal ideas of previous generations.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's this idea that those didn't really help us. They didn't actually make the world better. I don't agree with that sentiment at all. But it's that I think is the prevailing idea, that the way America has worked up till now has yielded us nothing. It is that progressive assumption that hasn't gotten us anything. It's made the world unsafe. It's made the world overcome by, whether you want to say capitalism or imperialism, any of these progressive talking points that you hear. It's that idea. And so by signing up for social justice, by signing up for radical stances on climate, Second Amendment, this kind of stuff, this is a way to fight the power, as it were. And as it turns out, it doesn't actually succeed in fighting the power at all, but at least it feels like that.
Well,
for a lot of people my age, that's the key.
I think you're right. They think they're fighting the power by expanding the power, which is what I find so funny about the radicalism of today. Like, why would you think that Bernie Sanders, who calls for the expansion of government, when he's railing against things the government's done, and then he wants you to vote for more government so government can fix the things the government messed up?
This is true, and this is something that my friend Jonah Goldberg talks about when he hears people talk about how they're being so cool by being progressive. It's like, well, the establishment is progressive in 99% of social areas. You're not being cool or awesome or anti-power. You're not raging against the machine by fighting for, defending, and charging the machine. That's just not how this works.
What's your sense of the arc of this thing? We're talking to Isaac Willour, and he's 22 years old and a political pundit and a thinker at an early age, which is kind of cool. And coming from a generation that has a different perspective, even if maybe yours is not matching theirs, Isaac, but that gives you a unique perspective. How did they get so confused, and how do we straighten them out? Do you have a feeling on that?
Yeah, I wish I could tell you exactly where my generation is going to go politically in the next 20 years. I would make a lot of money and sell a lot of books. But in terms of where it's going to go, I mean, a lot of people become more. We've all heard the term. We've all heard the saying about if you're not a conservative after 30, you have no brain. I think that will happen to people. I think they'll start reinvesting in some of these social institutions, because that's the other thing. Gen Z is incredibly socially isolated in terms of performance in social institutions. Think about marriage, the church, parasocial institutions. We just don't participate in them. As we get older, I think as more and more people my age start participating in those kinds of institutions, that might change. But the problem is some of them won't, right? So some of them, the alienation will just continue, and I think those people will continue to go down very, very dark paths, whether it's onto internet radicalization or whether it's just the slow decay of having no ambition. I think there are a lot of people in my generation, a lot of young men in particular, who are damned to that because they've just been taught that they can't have ambition, it's not healthy, or they've never been taught why it's worthwhile. And I think that's going to happen to a lot of people in my generation.
It's
funny. Makes me profoundly depressed.
I've never heard it framed in that way, but the other day I was somewhere with my wife at a restaurant or something where I can't place where it was, but say a coffee shop, and we were standing there looking at the people around us, and I said, these people, I remember where it was. Yeah, it was a sandwich shop. And everybody was in their 20s or early 30s or whatever, in that range. And they looked so pathetic. You know, the horrible clothes, the obesity, the unshaven faces of the men, the pieces of metal sticking out of the nostrils of the women. It was just so unappealing. I said to my wife, I don't want to know any of these people.
Yeah, well, I mean, there are hippies in every generation. Some of the hippies from older generations certainly settled down and calmed down.
Yes, that's what I said. But hippies in the day were not everybody. They were this little subculture. This is hippies took over the mainstream culture. The granola kind of framing that we put on people like that back in the day it seems to be mainstream culture today amongst young people.
Yeah, no, this is true. And I mean, you get back to the whole idea of what's going to be the breakdown between conservative members of Gen Z and liberal members of Gen Z. I mean, conservative members of Gen Z are going to grow up, get married, have families, and go to church and like do pro-social things. And hopefully, my goal is hopefully help stave off some of this social rot that's happening. But a lot of people who aren't involved in those social institutions, they're just going to keep going on this path to nowhere. And they're going to keep thinking that online activism is a substitute for virtue, and they're going to do all these things. And at the end of the day, there are going to be a lot of people, and I've thought about this a lot, and this is a depressing thing.
Wait, hold that thought. We've got to take a quick break, and I want to use that as a tease. So we're talking with Isaac Willour. We will continue in just a moment on WTIC.
Listen to the Todd Feinberg Show on the free Odyssey app. Download and like WTIC, and follow Todd Feinberg today.
We're talking Isaac Willour, Young Voices. Where do people find you online, Isaac? Wait a sec. I didn't push the button yet to put you back on the air. Go ahead.
ISAACWILLOUR on Twitter, and I write on Substack. You find me at youngvoices.org especially.
Youngvoices.org. All right, so give us the reveal that you were starting to say before we went to break.
Yeah, so this is the depressing truth about a lot of people in Generation Z. A lot of people in Generation Z are going to wake up in 10 to 20 years and realize, even if they have a good job and are very financially stable, that they are not, in fact, happy. And this is happening to people even now, because we have told people that if you chase careers and you don't do any of these pro-social things, and you go into a STEM field and you get a good degree and you go off and do this, then that will make you happy. And for some people it does, but I talk to more and more people my own age who simply aren't happy just doing that. There's
you mean
no
just
sense of
making a lot of money and not focusing on the world at large, but developing a very cloistered life?
Yeah.
Is that the stereotype?
And it's not even so much cloistered life. I wouldn't say that's exactly the Gen Z problem. Gen Z loves to opine about social issues. I mean, I'm here. I mean, like, Gen Z loves opining about social issues. But, like, when you opine about social issues through, like, Twitter and Instagram infographics, but you haven't talked to a real person in, like, weeks, this is what actually corrodes your sense of actual satisfaction, because you're not making any actual change. And furthermore, within your own life, that's how you become a very performative, hollow person, and my heart breaks for people like that. I mean, do you wonder why there's so many young men who just sit in people my age, dudes my age, who sit in their parents' basement, are just addicted to porn and do nothing?
Well, this is what I meant by the cloistered life, that young people tend to be working in jobs that maybe earn them a good living, and at the same time they're not. They might even be married or pseudo-married. That is, without having gotten married, they live in a marriage-like relationship, have no intention of getting their driver's license or having children. Or, you know, there's something blocking young people from transitioning into what we used to consider the move into adulthood.
This is true, yeah. I mean, I don't know if you've seen this film, but you should watch it. If you haven't, I'm pretty sure you have. American Psycho with Patrick Bateman. There's this quote in American Psycho that I think is disturbingly representative of my generation, which is, "You can shake my hand and you can sense our lifestyles are probably comparable, but I simply am not there." And in the case of Patrick Bateman, it's used as a plot device. But in the case of my generation, there are a lot of people who are making maybe making a lot of money and feel like they're opining on social issues of great importance. But personally, they are not fulfilled and they're not happy. And we're going to see a lot of people like that. And that is going to be, in the politics you'll see from my generation, whether it's on the right or whether it's on the left, a lot of those politics are the politics of deeply unhappy people who have the capacity to be very informed and care a great deal in a certain way, but don't have the framework, morally or practically, to put those beliefs into action, or won't.
But also, if you're not there's a wall between the caring about things that are out in the world but aren't impacting your life. So for example, the thing about not having kids, when you're responsible for other people's well-being, that is an experience of earth-shattering value, I think, from the point of view of being responsible and then finding the joy of having to give of yourself. And what I hear young people saying is, oh, I don't want to do that. That's too much work. Or, I care too much about this part of my life and that part of my life to have kids.
Yeah, I know a lot of people like that. And I mean, I'm 22. I'm not married yet. I don't have kids. But I do feel that the vocation of being a parent is way more important than the vocation of being a pundit or being a journalist or anything else that I might end up doing. That is how you find meaning in your life, is by creating things and by passing that on to other people and passing those values on to other people. That's how, in a weird sense, you and the values that you hold dear will live forever if you do that. And if you don't, they won't. And that's the corollary. And that's what Gen Z is staring in the face right now.
Wow, that was pretty profound. Thank you for that, Isaac Willour. Impressive thoughts, and we appreciate you sharing them with us. Check out Isaac at youngvoices.org. Thank you for being here, sir. We'll talk to you again next week.
Dude, Todd, thank you so much. Y'all take care. God bless.
All righty, Isaac Willour on WTIC.